I had very briefly had a shared NDE where I went out to heaven, where it was just like a field and a white building there. And it didn't last long. I was brought back pretty quickly because I wasn't meant to go there. Point is, since I had that experience, I then knew one way how to get up to heaven. So when I was 18, one day I fell asleep, and I guess my higher self decided that she wanted to go sneak into heaven to get some higher knowledge. So I suddenly became distinctly aware there. I'm 18, trying to sneak in.
Hello, I am here today with Nadine Telishewsky, and she has had many STEs, spiritually transformative experiences, astral travels, experiences with angels, as well as a near-death experience. And so today we're going to learn about her story. Thank you so much for joining me, Nadine.
Thank you, Melissa.
Yes, so maybe we could start by learning how this all started for you, because you've had experiences since you were very young. So could you share with us about your first experience and how you began having these spiritual experiences?
So for myself, it started at about the age of 6 that I was someone who was sexually abused in my youth. So whenever it would happen, I actually would leave my body. So that had happened for those next few years. And at the time, I didn't know what happened. I would just leave my body and everything would go just blank. And later on, angels had showed me some memories of my soul grandmother coming along and scooping me up. And that's why everything would go black. She would just completely scoop me up in her arms and fly off with me. And later on, she would come back and open her arms, and I would go floating across the room and return back into my body when it was finishing. So it all started that way. And then when I was a teen, I actually one day prayed to God and said, God, I would do anything to work with your angels. And if you ever need someone to do something for you, please pick me. And after a few months, angels started coming to me at night in dreams, and everything would become very realistic and vivid. And they would come into a dream at night and take me out of it to go astral traveling with them. So that's how my experiences started.
Amazing. So I like to just let you share whatever you feel led to share about your experiences, because I know that you've had a lot of them over the years. So whatever seems most important to talk about.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, Melissa. So I'll continue a little bit on from there and go a bit chronologically. So one thing angels showed me in my teen years when I went traveling with them at times is some past lives. And in one way, it was wonderful seeing past lives because I was both male and female in different ones. I was different nationalities. I lived in different countries and spoke different languages. So it was wonderful to experience all that and remember all that. I also saw some different similar problems or traumas in life as well, and was able to kind of link those. When I was 15, they also showed me a vision of how in the future, at one point, global warming and natural disasters will become a lot worse for us. And at age 17, I actually had a very quick shared NDE with someone. I don't even know who the person was. It was a teenage boy who had died in a car crash. And I had very briefly had a shared NDE where I went out to heaven, where it was just like a field and a white building there. And it didn't last long. I was brought back pretty quickly because I wasn't meant to go there. Point is, since I had that experience, I then knew one way how to get up to heaven. So when I was 18, one day I fell asleep, and I guess my higher self decided that she wanted to go sneak into heaven to get some higher knowledge. So I suddenly became distinctly aware there. I'm 18, trying to sneak in to that building. And right away, obviously, it didn't work. Angels knew I was there, and they knew why I was there as well. So they actually had me pass this quick test. And since I passed it, I was allowed to go into the building and they decided what higher knowledge to give me. I was explained that there's actually more than 10,000 meanings of life. And they showed me only 5 at the time in order to show us how we can see each other as one and strive towards world peace together. So this one I'll just go over really quickly, and then I'll get into some other experiences. So the first meaning they showed me is all about unconditional love, of course. And they showed me exactly how it felt to both unconditionally love someone and be unconditionally loved back by them. And it was fully accepting and appreciating everything about them without any conditions. And I was shown that if each of us were able to see each other as if they were a beloved parent and child and best friend and mentor all wrapped into one, then we'd be able to accept each other exactly as we are and all unconditionally love each other. And the second meaning they showed me is all about reincarnation, and showed me that we all go through this and we all experience being different genders and nationalities and everything else. And we reincarnate to learn different lessons in different lifetimes because Earth is just a giant school. And we reincarnate for fairness because once everyone goes through hundreds of lives, we've all experienced everything fairly. We also learn to harness compassion and understanding for each other after we've literally been in each other's shoes in past lives. The third meaning they showed me is that everything in this material world is an illusion. Our bodies are just costumes, and any differences between us, so everything in the world are illusions. Because underneath were our true selves, which are tiny pieces of love and unconditional love and light. So we're all equal to each other at our core. The fourth meaning is that if anyone ever judges anyone else on their costume or life situation, then judging is just irrelevant because they're judging an illusion. Because we ourselves choose these illusions. We're just one lifetime to live. And so I was shown, though, that if we can close our human eyes and see through our soul eyes, that we're all the same equal beings of love and light underneath, then we will want to come together in world peace instead of continually fighting each other over illusions. And the fifth meaning they showed me is that everything matters that we do. And in my NDE life review, I had relived my entire life, not only from my own, but from everyone else's perspective as well. And I understood just how intrinsically we're all intertwined with each other. And we all affect each other through our words and actions and emotions, and even our frequencies we're at affect each other. And then that all ripples out into society and affects everyone else. So everything matters, especially kindness. So some years went by, and then in 2004, I was 24 years old and I had my NDE. And what happened is a man had drugged my drink with a date rape drug, which resulted in me having an overdose and massive heart attack from it. However, I had 5 premonitions before that. For 6 months before my NDE, I started to be really afraid of things I was eating and drinking more and more, and I couldn't understand why. 3 months before my NDE, I had a dream. I was with my best friend at the time. We were standing in an unknown location. I don't know where, and I was holding a mixed drink. And at some point in this dream, I passed out. I had a heart attack and I died. And I thought this was a very realistic, vivid dream, but never had any heart problems before. So I just dismissed it, that it was just a dream. Little did I know that was premonition. 1 week before my NDE, I received an invitation to go to a New Year's Eve party. And I had a feeling when I got it that something bad was going to happen there, but I didn't know what. And then the night before the party, I had 2 dreams of significance. In one, I dreamt of a man. He was in his late 20s. He was tall, blonde hair, Caucasian. And we were chatting and laughing. And the next day on the way to the party, I told my friend about this dream. And shortly after we arrived, this man enters who looks exactly like that and comes over and starts talking to me. And my friend kept elbowing me and making jokes about, "Hey, Nadine, you met the guy of your dreams," which was funny at the time, but that definitely didn't happen at all. The last dream I had the night before the party was actually another astral travel. Angels had grabbed me and flew me so quickly across the universe in some strange type of building, and they were showing me what my job was going to be in the afterlife. I was actually going to be a guide for a few people that were still going to be living on Earth at the time. So this showed me that even in the afterlife, the older souls help guide and take care of the younger souls, which I see as such an amazing and fair process. So even though I had all these premonitions that something was going to happen, I also had a strong feeling that I somehow needed to go. So I did. So my best friend and I went to New Year's Eve party. It was at the house of a coworker who I didn't really know. And I was only there for 2 hours, and I only sipped on 2 mixed drinks during that time. And I wasn't drunk at all. Most of the time, my drink was in one room with my belongings, and the rest of the time, I was mostly in other rooms, and I was chatting with others or dancing. And unknowingly to me, someone had put something in my drink. So at some point, I started to feel really high. Then I collapsed. Then I started to become paralyzed more and more. And I realized what must have happened. And I thankfully told my best friend. Then I was really scared. And I remembered calling out in my head, God, please help me, shortly before I passed out. From my best friend then telling the rest of the story after I passed out, she said at that point, 3 men had come over to her and said, oh, she must just be drunk. And they had wanted to pick me up to go put me in a upstairs bedroom to go sleep it off. But my best friend refused to allow anyone to touch me, thankfully. She's so wonderful. And then she said, I started vomiting black, which I found out later on was apparently blood in my system, and she called 911. I woke up in the hospital about 6 hours later, feeling so horrible and so disoriented. And the doctor told me I had a drug overdose and was having a massive heart attack when I had been coming on the way into the hospital. And they hadn't been sure at the time if I was going to make it. The doctors and nurses really didn't seem to treat me well or listen to me of what happened. I think they thought I was a drug addict, even though I've never used any drugs before. Not that that is a good reason for treating others that way, but I think that might have been what happened. In any case, they soon discharged me with a prescription for potassium because they said I needed to regulate my heart for the next while. The thing is, I lived by myself and I went home and I felt so horrible still. I never got to a pharmacy to get this prescription. And in the evening, I felt so disoriented. I started to have severe chills. I was so weak and my heart was beating so erratically, so quickly, and then would go so slow back and forth until I suddenly felt my heart just stop and I popped out of my body. I felt weightless and so free and a complete lack of time. And I was so thrilled to have left my body. I wanted nothing to do with it. And I no longer felt sick or in pain at all. I just felt peace. And after being out of my body so many times before, I knew exactly what to do. I just flew straight up, higher and faster. At one point, everything went black just for a few seconds, but it wasn't scary at all. And it felt so comforting. And it lifted. And I was suddenly over this beautiful valley, mountains in the background. And everything looked so vivid. The colors, the energies, everything so beautiful and so vibrant. And then suddenly, flying right beside me was a hundreds of feet tall, enormous, partial creature-like being with huge wings. And he was made out of pitch black smoke. Although it looked more like he was wearing a costume, though, because I was able to feel and see that he was a light angel underneath. And he had the most brilliant white light coming out of his eyes and ears and nose and mouth. And I understood he was what we consider the angel of death, but he's not a dark being at all. He's a light angel. And to me, I just felt like he was the angel of solace because I'd never felt such peace and safety and solace in front of him before. So it was so wonderful being in front of him. And I realized he had scooped me up in his wing while I was flying up to make sure I had gotten to the right area that I was supposed to. So I thanked him for helping me. And everything is telepathic in that realm, which feels just so natural and normal there and wonderful. And so he telepathically said to me in return, "We are pleased for you to be back home." He then flew to the top of one of the mountains and he was just scanning everything and overseeing everyone who was transitioning over at the time. Close by then, there was the most beautiful white light from above. And I went towards it and into it. And it just completely encompassed me. And it was vibrating and alive with pure love energy. And I felt completely overcome with absolute unconditional love that there's nothing like it I've ever experienced down here in this life before. And I knew it was coming from God. And I was just so happy to be in it and feeling it once again. And I started to go up into the light towards the source of it. And as soon as I did that, there was this angel who appeared in front of me and greeted me and wanted me to follow them and let me know that I was soon going up to heaven. And it was so wonderful in that moment. And the angel at one point stopped and put his arm to the side and said, "Look." And I looked to the side and there I had my life with you. And I relived my entire life over again in a matter of moments. But this time it wasn't from my own perspective, but also from every single other person's perspective that I ever interacted with. I saw and felt the consequences on everyone around me and on myself of every word, action, and decision I've ever made. And it gave me very profound insight and seeing just how everything we do and say to each other affects us all. And then I understood that that really does ripple out from there into greater society. I wasn't judged for anything at all whatsoever. Everything was simply fully accepted and just was. Although I also understood that the only thing that really matters in our lives is how kind we are to each other. I've lived almost 100 lives before this one, and I can see those previous lives attached below my current life inside this giant descending white cyclone of energy. However, since I've previously seen some of my past lives, I chose not to review those as well. Then I continued following the angel out into the light. And at that point, there was nothing else I possibly wanted to do than to be going up into that light because I finally felt home once again. And I just wanted to continue going home and being and feeling unconditionally loved and at peace. But then I turned to the right and looked down because something caught my attention. And I suddenly saw a panoramic view, all these high-speed videos in a way of the futures of everyone and everything, people I knew and all kinds of people I didn't know. And some things were positive, but many things were sad and traumatic. And my heart just completely was aching for all these things that I saw that people were going to go through. And it made me stop in my tracks. The angel stopped and just very patiently waited for me. But then I asked, would all of these negative events still happen if I hadn't have died right now? And the angel said, what you see is simply the future that is currently set to be. Yet any possible change could conceivably change what is yet to come. So I asked, is it possible for me to go back and attempt to stop some of these negative events from taking place? The angel slowly said, we must warn you. There's a possibility you may not succeed in stopping any negative event or even change anything for their betterment, but we will leave the decision up to you if you want to return to Earth or not. I told the angel, even knowing I may not be able to change anything, I at least have to try. The angel seemed a little concerned in a way, or maybe that's what I understood, because I understood this was originally supposed to be my ideal exit point to transition. And especially since I'd already seen my job of what I was supposed to do in the afterlife of being a guide. And they also previously showed me what my next life was supposed to be, to reincarnate into a female growing up and living in Spain. So I would be changing that timeline if I had decided to return. But since we all have complete free will, I chose to go back. And the angel nodded, and with a wave of his arm, he released me from the light. And I fell so hard and fast and crashed right into my body once again. I no longer saw the angel at all, but I distinctly heard their voice say, your mother is about to phone you. You must turn over and answer your phone if you're going to survive. Moments later, my phone started ringing, and it took all my energy to just slowly turn over in bed and answer it. And it was my mother. And she heard I'd been at the hospital and asked if there was anything I needed. And I said, yes, I have a prescription I need and I don't feel well enough to get it. She said she'd be over, and she ended up bringing me my prescription. for the potassium, and it regulated my heart rate. So after I returned to my body, I remembered everything about my NDE except for any specifics of what was going to happen in the future to anyone. So they kind of blocked it out now is the best I can explain it, where it's just all blurry. And that was the sole reason that I chose to return to Earth. Without that, I no longer knew how to help people or felt I had a purpose for coming back. I then had many health issues, and over time I lost my family, I lost my friends, I lost my job, I lost my apartment. So I had really regretted returning for quite a while afterwards. I also tried to tell people about my NDE experience. And unfortunately, a lot of times I was disbelieved. People thought I was crazy. Some people are like, oh, you just had a dream. So I actually became quite depressed afterwards. And I had decided that I needed to shut down my spirituality and just not talk about anything spiritual anymore because I wanted to be accepted by society. So for the next 16 years, I had shut that part of myself down. During that time, those 16 years, I had worked in various social service fields. And my passion especially was working with the homeless population for a decade, which I really felt at least gave me a purpose. Then after getting multiple injuries there and having some other problems, after about a decade, I quit. And I wasn't sure what to do. But a few months later, I actually had this giant spiritual reawakening. So I now see that as the purpose of angels getting me off my track so that this can happen. So in February of 2021, one day I suddenly said out into the open, angels, I haven't seen you since I was a teen, but I would love to have you come back. I'm ready to open up to my spirituality once again. And I also need a purpose. Maybe what is one of angel's biggest problems that a human like me might be able to help you with? If you tell me, I'll help you. I had no idea what would happen. However, a few weeks later, I tried for the first time to write out my NDE, and I struggled for days. It was so difficult because I was trying to use very limited human words meant for this material realm to describe experiences in a timeless, telepathic realm filled with unconditional love. So the words just weren't there to be able to describe all this. So I then half-jokingly called down the angel of death from my NDE and any other angel who's free to come sit at my kitchen table with me because I wanted them to help me write this. The calm weather that had been outside had suddenly switched into a giant blizzard with a lightning storm in it. Some other after effects happened as well. And after stilling myself, I tried to speak directly to angels for the first time on a whim, and it surprisingly worked. Angels had told me my soul name, which actually is Royet. And I knew that to be true because as soon as I Googled it, it said that it's derived from ancient Sanskrit and means the color red, which happens to be my favorite color. And many people in life had nicknamed me Red. Angels also gave me proof that the angel of death was sitting with me at my kitchen table, as when I asked him his name, he told me Azrael. And when I looked that up, Googled it, it's what both Judaism and Islam referred to as the angel of death. So that was very nice of him to have come down to my kitchen with me. A week later, I woke up one day and felt extremely light. And when I closed my eyes to go speak to my angels, I suddenly realized I was actually in some kind of cloud realm, and there was 4 light beings there, and I called them over. And for some reason, they all started to speak to me about a different subject all at the same time. And I was so overwhelmed trying to understand this and try to have a conversation with them that I was about to leave. And right before I did, another light being showed up, and it was my grandfather, and he had grabbed my hand and placed one small piece of silver light in it right as I came out of my astral travel. After I came out of it, I didn't know what to do with it because it doesn't exist here in this realm. So I had placed it into my heart for safekeeping. And I thankfully have had a few conversations to speak with my grandfather since on the other side, which is wonderful. And so from this reawakening is how I realized I could now speak to angels and astral travel.
Wow.
So one time I went astral traveling and I swooped down once quickly into Mother Earth. And I simply thought in my mind, oh, wow, Mother Earth, your energy is just so beautiful. Then I heard a distinctly female voice say, thank you. I was so surprised and said, Mother Earth, you're alive? And she said, yes. So this is how, over time, occasionally I've had some discussions with Mother Earth. I'll just get a little bit into it. One of the first things we did speak about was her damage from pollution and her struggles with global warming. And at one point she said, I love all people and all species, and my sole purpose is to continually and unconditionally give everything of myself for people and animals to live off of me. And I'm happy to do this because I love all of you, and I don't judge any of you for the damage that's been caused. But my problems have gotten more extreme than I can handle, and I'm forced to self-correct more and more often, simply to balance myself out, because I always need to stay in balance. Another point later on, I asked Mother Earth if she had a message to humanity, and she said, long ago, people were all aware that my spirit exists. People would always speak to me and be aware of all my many gifts. I was always happy to constantly give them. Please remind everyone that I exist and I love them, and I would love to reconnect with all people once again. And I told her, okay, I'll tell people your message, Mother. She is the sweetest, best mother that anyone could ever ask for. For example, one time I was walking and there was a lightning storm, and I suddenly started to become worried because I had to turn into the lightning storm to start heading home. And as soon as I started worrying about it, she switched the lightning storm about a mile in the other direction so I wouldn't have to walk into it. Another time she asked me to hug her ground one time in a park, and I did, and she sent unconditional love into my heart center. It was so wonderful having that energy exchange with her. And another time, even though I live downtown in the middle of a major city, one night she sent me 2 deer who appeared out of nowhere, just down the street. And one of them slowly kept walking towards me for a long time. He came to maybe within about 8 feet. And he was so beautiful and calm before he suddenly just turned and walked away. Another time I was astral traveling, and I had intended to go out to space, which actually is the angel's light realm. However, this time I ended up somewhere else. It was completely dark and silent there. There was absolutely nothing around anywhere. And the darkness was not truly dark, though, and it had a substance to it. It was actually the void, and I wasn't afraid at all. And I decided to stay and relax for a while. And then I thought it would be really nice if I could just lay back and float here as if I was on water. And instantly I laid back and started floating. And it was really peaceful and relaxing. When I came out of it, I tuned into my angels and asked, why did you send me to the void for? They said, we never sent you anywhere. You sent yourself there. They had reminded me then that a week prior, I had simply wondered in my mind what it would have been like if I had ended up in the void during my NDE instead of in heaven. That single thought of curiosity was enough to have manifested me sending myself there. I then asked my angels, what is the void? Angels said, the void is simply all that existed before the universe was ever created. It is not meant to be a frightening place. It works like an echo. If you are frightened in it, it will echo straight back in return. But if you can dissolve all fear and instead send love into the universe, it will echo love back in return. So from that, I was able to realize that since God eventually turned the void into the universe, that the universe works in the same way. It's still an echo, and it will still echo to us back in return what resonance we put into. So at one point after my spiritual awakening, I had told my angels that I wanted to heal my PTSD and trauma from my childhood abuse. Angels had me learn some information. Then I astral traveled out to space to meet 3 angels there. They had me go through this long process. And I'll just tell you about a few parts. For most of it, they stood aside, and I understood that I needed to make decisions during it of what I wanted to do. At one point, I had to connect with various traumas that I had experienced in my past lives. And there were quite a few of them because I've had almost 100 past lives. Not that all of them involved trauma, but there are ones that did. And when I connected to all of them, all at the same time, and the energy to it, I was able to detach and release that from my system. At the very end of this process that they took me through to release more and more attachment to trauma, angels suddenly placed in front of me what I found out later on was actually an amalgamation of all my past abusers in this life and previous lives altogether. An angel stood aside again, and I knew I needed to decide what to do or say to my abusers. But I thought about it, and then I decided that it didn't matter why they did it. I also didn't need to know anything from them, so I didn't want to ask them anything. And I didn't even want to get angry at them. I realized it all just didn't matter anymore. So I decided instead I wanted to be kind in return to them. So I actually thanked my abusers for the very hard lessons that I learned from them in this and previous lives, and that I was choosing to detach from them and not allow their experiences to affect me any longer, and that I forgive them and I let them go. And I tried to think of the kindest thing I can do in return. And I decided to manifest a blanket of love out of my hands. Because on the astral realm, you can manifest anything instantly. So I manifested this blanket of love. I wrapped it around them, and I asked for a beam of light, and they sent it down. And I visualized, just mentally sent him off into the light. And the moment that my abusers hit the light, I felt this giant detachment off of my whole system. The energy, everything around it just detached off of me, and this huge weight lifted, and I finally felt completely free from it. And since then, even the next day, I woke up and I realized everything was different. I'm able to mention my trauma now without shutting down, and the PTSD symptoms that I had had for years just were gone. I was completely detached emotionally and mentally from the situation now, even though I remember that it still happened. So I was so grateful for my angels for helping me do that. I asked angels at one point what trauma actually is. Angels said, trauma is a gateway to breaking the illusions of earth, and a possible gateway to connecting to the ethereal and the light. I asked why God would make something like suffering through childhood abuse as a gateway to the ethereal light. And the angels said, it is not the only way. There are other gateways to the light. God chose to add trauma as a possible gateway so that people do not only have to suffer as a consequence. I felt knowing that from angels really also helped me with it. So that process that I went through on the astral realm was the only one that my angels facilitated for me. However, I myself many times, whether on the astral realm or sometimes even just envisioning it in my mind, have tried to do the same process. And I had slowly over time went back over my life, and anyone who I may have ever felt hurt by in some way, I would do the same procedure, just forgive them, let them go, choose to detach from everything and send them off into light always. And I learned that sometimes I also needed to forgive myself at times for things that I may have been blamed myself for, or felt guilty in life for something. And angels have shown me how it's just as important for us to be able to give ourselves that self-forgiveness at times, not just to others. So over time, me doing that, I've been able to do so much emotional and mental healing in my life from it. With this process is that I felt it's so powerful and helped to change my life so much. And it makes sense because at one point angels had told me that some of the many reasons that we're here on earth are, at one point they said it's to train ourselves to eventually emit only the frequency of love above all others. And another time they said it's to learn to become free of all attachments to everything but the ethereal, which I thought was very sweet. I've also at times struggled in my life with low self-esteem and anxiety and feeling unworthy at times. And angels have also helped me with that and showed me that we're all beings of light and unconditional love at our core. So we all deserve light and love in our lives, and we all deserve everything good, and we're all worthy of it, is what they showed me. And angels said at one point, "It will not make you selfish to have self-love. It is the true essence of your soul, and it is okay to never discount yourself from your own life force energy." Angels also don't want us to feel bad or shame over anything. And they've said, "Know that all forms of God's love absolve all actions that may make you feel unworthy, and know that the absolvement is there whenever you're ready to accept it into the fabric of your being," which I've always held as very inspirational from them. So another time I told my angels I'm open to a healing from them because I wanted to next heal my health issues. Instead, angels gently said, "If you want to be healed, heal yourself." I asked, "How?" They said, "Practice, be completely open to it, and believe you deserve to be healed." I dabbled in 4 energy healing modalities for the previous 2 decades. I was never able to heal my health issues before. However, angels now wanted me on my own to try my own form of it. So I practiced sending energies in various ways to my health issue areas. And I visualized different ways of healing. And I worked on all my chakras and I removed any blocks I came across. And then I refilled those with light and love. And after a month, I healed one of my health issues I'd had for many years, an autoimmune disorder called Hashimoto's disease, which is my body attacking my thyroid gland. I was so relieved from this. Next, I'd had an abscess tooth that a dentist said probably wouldn't heal and I'd probably need a dental implant. I worked on my tooth many times and eventually I couldn't eat on it again and I was no longer in pain and I never needed an implant. I've also been able to remove take away my migraines when I would get them. So after this, I got excited that I now knew how to energy heal. I also learned through this process and through information from angels that I can ask if there was any message behind any health issues or injuries or emotional hurts I may have had, and a message in terms of what may have caused them or maybe just what I need to do to heal them in some way. And I usually get some type of answer around it. And sometimes it was that I need to let go of an experience or an emotion that I was holding on to that may have been causing a block in my energy system. Sometimes there was a belief that may have been holding me back that I may needed to change. Sometimes it was something I needed to forgive myself for. Sometimes I just wasn't on the right path, especially if I was making decisions out of fear instead of out of love. Or sometimes I just wasn't on the right path for me. Or sometimes it was something I chose to experience in life. However, by following any message I may have received surrounding it, and then doing my energy healing, I've been able to, over time, clear and heal most of my health issues. So later on, I ended up opening my own energy healing and spiritual coaching business. And it's been so wonderful since that I can help others and support others energetically and spiritually in this way now. And I'd also like to tell everyone what angels told me karma is. They told me that karma actually isn't punishment for anything. They said that if someone isn't able to just learn a life lesson in one lifetime, then that's fine. They just keep repeating a different version of it in a subsequent lifetime until they are able to just see it as the school lesson it is and learn whatever lesson can be learned from it. Then we're able to release it as karma and move on to the next lesson. And they said that it's actually very common for us at times to take multiple lifetimes to learn certain lessons. And they said that's completely okay because it's fine for all of us to take as long as we need on our soul journeys to do this. So karma is not punishment for anything and definitely not for anything wrong that we've ever done in a past life at all. And they've told me many times that God has never judged or punished any of us for anything. So Earth, they said, is just a giant school to learn different lessons. Angels have also told me many things about them. They are genderless beings of light, and there are legions more angels than there are humans. So each human gets our own large group of guardian angels called a light collective. And they said their main responsibility is for our soul progression, for our protection, and to help guide us towards a path and decisions of the light. Angels aren't allowed to intervene, though, in our lives without our free will permission, unless it's a life or death situation. So if somebody wants to communicate with their angels, though, I'm firm belief that anyone can. And they just need to be open to it and believe it's possible. And they need to try communicating with them. And if anyone is interested, I do have one page on my website describing various techniques that people can try to communicate with your own angels. I asked guardian angels once if they had a message to humanity to be able to help us. And they did. They said, be kind and gentle with everyone you meet. Try to understand rather than to judge others. See everyone and everything as connected. Know that everyone has their own angels there for them who want to connect with their assigned people. So believe in us, try to connect with us, and tell everyone you know that we are real. No one is ever completely broken and can always choose to get back up. It's okay to slow down because there is no wrong way to complete your purpose in life. Always shine your light and try to make all decisions with light and love, which I thought was very sweet of angels to give us these tips. One lesson angels taught me on the astral realm in the past couple of years was about this light element called creation strands, I called it, which is a very long story, but creation strands are these at least 60 feet long, giant, twisted over and over again strands of light, which angels explained at one point was one of the basis of creating everything in the universe. And angels showed me how to use these strands in various ways for different purposes. I first actually started to use them to turn into first things in nature and then animals and then aspects of the cosmos. And it was absolutely amazing for me to experience actually being nature and animals and stars and all different things, and to experience that everything has this energy pulse, but they're each unique one and a unique vibration. And everything had a consciousness to it, even everything in nature. I also learned to form energy connections with these strands. At one point, angels got me to connect one to my third eye, and I had an experience of unity consciousness. In it, I quickly expanded out into the entire universe and dissolved into it where there was no indistinguishable part of me left. And the universe felt like it expanded out into me and dissolved into me at the exact same time. And I felt birth and death and all people and animals and nature and planets and everything was spinning around and everything was in flux and in transition. And it felt like this huge dance that we were all in. And everything also had a resonance, a vibration, and a different tone. And it was so beautiful hearing this giant symphony of the universe because everything was vibrating and had a different tone all at the same time. And it was so gorgeous. And it was so wonderful afterwards to have experienced that and to experience that everything has a consciousness and is alive. And this had led into further teachings about it by angels to show me that our souls are not only tiny pieces of unconditional love and light, that we are actual tiny pieces of God. We are God and our consciousness is God's. So all animals and nature and planets and everything all are tiny pieces of God. And it's like we're all little atoms living in God's giant body of all the universes and realms combined. And that showed me that we all truly, completely are all one and intrinsically, ethereally, all connected to each other, all weaved together. And one lesson I was shown is that since God is everything and already knew everything and was everything, God separated tiny parts of himself out and wiped our memories. So we as God can have an experience of living individual lives and experience being children and experience learning and growing and evolving. And later, when we're finished our hundreds or however many lifetimes of learning different lessons and slowly advancing our souls, we're eventually all going to go back to being part of that larger whole of God and being pieced back together. However, we're still at the same time simultaneously going to still keep our unique individuality, as we've all taken different unique paths and each have molded ourselves into very unique expressions of God along our soul journeys. I also had a near-death-like experience in October of 2021. I'll just tell you a little bit about it. I was going astral traveling. However, this time it showed up as a giant blue butterfly, and I was so excited and overjoyed to see God. And I transformed myself into a tiny little red butterfly and went flying around the universe together. And it was one of the happiest moments of my life doing this. And at one point, God stopped and wanted me to get on his back. And we transported to another location where he gave me a very different life review. And in it, he only showed me all the times in my life that I was kind or helpful to others. And God told me afterwards that nothing else concerned him except for kindness. Then we flew to a waterfall and a rainbow, which was filled with God's unconditional love again. And it was pure bliss and filled me up once again. I was so happy to have experienced that again. And then after, I went and had an experience with Ganesh, who I met, and Ganesh taught me 2 life lessons, which were a little more personalized for myself. And I was so thankful to have had this near-death-like experience, especially since I didn't need to die this time to have one. And I've only ever very occasionally had communications with God that I've been very thankful for. But I'll tell you a few inspirational quotes by God. The first is, "Everything one says and does of the light matters. It adds to the light and can never be erased," which gave me a lot of hope to know that everything we do in kindness for others matters and that it's all recorded and it can never be erased. Another quote is, "With each thought and decision made, future chances could change." I've been shown in many ways that there's no set future, that there are only different possible future chances and of any possible future occurring, and that we are all literally co-creating our future together, manifesting it with every thought and word and action that each of us do, which makes sense that since we're all pieces of God, that we're also all very powerful creators and manifestors as well, manifesting the future. And it was very powerful for me to know as well that a single thought can possibly lead us down a different path. And the last quote I have from God is when I asked about also if there's any messages to humanity from God as well, since I tend to ask all light beings this. God said, "I want to have a relationship with everyone. Whenever someone is ready to, however they choose to allow me to flow in is the right way." And I've been told in many ways, God doesn't care what we call God or what religion or spirituality we may or may not choose to believe in or anything else at all that we choose to believe in. It doesn't matter at all. That God has never judged us and never punished us and just completely accepted us as we are. And that at any point, if we choose to allow God, who is unconditional love, to flow into us, it is the right way, no matter how we choose it, which I thought was very beautiful for God to say. And I loved how as well that God won't even force us to have a relationship with God, which showed me as well that everything is free will. So even choosing God or not is our free will choice. And no matter what, even that, God just unconditionally loves us and unconditionally accepts us, no matter what we choose. And that to me is complete unconditional love, to love us without any conditions whatsoever.
That was absolutely beautiful. It just covered so much and shared so many beautiful messages, and I so appreciate it. So we could close out by letting the viewers know where they can find you. You have a website, lovelightenergy.ca. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
No, just thank you so much, Melissa, for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it, and for all that you do to help all of us experiencers, and just to have the opportunity to help spread light messages is just so wonderful. So thank you for being a part of that.
Thank you for watching the Love Covered Life podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and comment with your thoughts and opinions, and check the description box for the links to my free community where I share lots of resources, my Pay What You Can community where we do classes and challenges together, my TikTok, Instagram, my Clips channel, and lovecoveredlife.com where I share my paintings. Thank you so much for your support.